Snap, I ain't know y'all was in here, man. My bad. Yo, what's up? This is Terry Warfield. I hope you're having a good day so far. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. I'm a filmmaker. I make motivational videos, and I love talking about all things tech. So if you like that type of stuff, make sure you hit subscribe. And if you're part of the notification squad, drop a hashtag up in here so I know you're up in the comments. Sorry I was, all emotional and everything. That video was, it got me right here, right in the feels. But can you believe that was made on an a6300? Yes, man, a 3-year-old camera pumping out that type of quality. And that's what I came to talk about today. In 2019, is the a6300 still a good buy, or should you spend your money elsewhere? So I got to give you a little bit of backstory. I've been using the a6300 for about a year, maybe a little bit longer. I've used it on paid work. I use it for all of my YouTube videos. I'm using it right now, and this thing has not failed me yet. So I want to give y'all an idea if you should spend your money on it, because there's all these new cameras out, right? The a6400 is out with this newfangled flip screen and all of these new features. The a7 III, these new Fujis, these new Panasonics, and here's the a6300 just nestled right at the bottom. Maybe about $500 or $600 on the used market. And the argument is, can you find anything else around that price point with all of these features? And short answer, no. But Terry, what features are you talking about? Okay, well, let me tell you what I love about the a6300 the most. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a long list. Number one, cost. Like I said, on the used market, you can get an a6300 for anywhere between $500 to $600. The second thing is 4K. Now, I know a lot of y'all might be like, oh, we don't need 4K and everything else. Listen, being able to film in 4K gives you the ability to reframe your shots if necessary, if you're editing. And also, the Sony 6300 actually shoots in 6K and downsamples it to 4K. What that means for you is that you get super high quality 4K footage out of the a6300 that even cameras that cost twice as much can't rival still yet. Ain't that crazy? 4K 24 frames a second or 30 frames a second at 100 megabits per second is a ton of detail, and even though some cameras can shoot higher bit rates, you would be hard pressed to tell the difference. I'm just being honest. The next thing I really love is the 120 frames per second slow-mo. Now, I know everybody's kind of overdoing the slow-mo thing, me included. So I'm trying to get back into being more creative with slow motion and using it in between other shots, but still being able to have 120 frames per second at 1080p and it be clean video. Sure, it's not the sharpest, but a lot of y'all look at my slow-mo and you don't even know that it's not 4K. That's how good it is, as long as you apply a little bit of sharpening and post. It's passable. But again, you have 4K 24 frames a second and 30, 1080p 24, 30, 60, 120, like all of those built in the camera without a super duper crazy crop. Which again, if you want anything like that around this price point, you're gonna get some 120 frames per second at 720p, etc. So that's that. The next thing is the form factor. It's a super small camera. Now, this has some positives and negatives, which I'm gonna go over in a second, but one of the things that I noticed is being like on paid gigs and stuff like that, people tend to not take you as serious because it's not this big intimidating C100 Canon camera, you know what I'm saying? However, once they see the finished product, they like, I can't believe that you filmed that with that little camera. So if you slap a 16 to 50 kit lens on here, this camera is small enough to fit into a coat pocket or a jacket pocket or something like that. So that's the next thing I love, is the form factor. The next thing, stills. Listen, if I took a picture on this camera with a good lens next to a a7 III with a good lens, the average person would not be able to tell a difference. Unless you have a trained eye, you know how to spot differences in compression and stuff like that. The picture quality for stills is crazy out of the a6300, man. If you got one and it wasn't enough for you, then obviously you're like a pro photographer. You probably need more. But the average person, the 6300 is just enough. I use it for Instagram pictures. I use it for pictures for everything. Family pictures, event photography I use it for. Never had a complaint about it or anything like that. And that kind of segues me into low light performance and autofocus. The low light performance on the a6300 is crazy. Even in video, man. I can can go up to, if necessary, ISO 6400 in video mode and still get some clean footage. I might need to denoise it a little bit, but my highlights are still there, shadows are still there, dynamic range is still there. And for pictures, same thing. And that takes me into autofocus, man. Now, autofocus is one of those things where if you've never had good autofocus, you don't know what you are missing. The 6300, the autofocus is fast, it's precise, and even though the 6300 doesn't have a flippy screen, which is, you know, debatable whether that's a pro or a con, I haven't been that mad about not having one because the autofocus is so reliable on the a6300. I usually only need to check frame it and then I'm good to go. The only thing I will say is in lower light conditions, this camera will suffer some when it comes to autofocus, but most cameras will, even the more expensive ones will too. So just keep that in mind. Now, the last killer feature that you won't find on any other camera around this price point is log profiles. You have S-Log2, S-Log3, you get center profiles, you get all of these different profiles built into the camera, and you don't get those in any other camera unless you want to spend more than $1,000. So again, at 500 bucks, man, this thing is a steal. However, it does come with some disadvantages, and I gotta tell you about those because the disadvantages, they suck, and I'm just gonna be honest. There's three major ones that I really hate. The first one is battery life. Now, we did talk about how the small form factor is great, right? Well, the problem with that is you gotta use small batteries, and these things are tiny and they're low capacity, and even though they're cheap, you need 19 of them to go on a shoot and not run out of juice. Now, one of the saving graces for the 6300 is USB charging. Another 2 points for the 6300 because a lot of cameras around this price point don't have that. Theoretically, endless power if you use power banks and stuff like that with you. But if you don't have that, then you got to carry around 94 of these things to make it through a day. Huge disadvantage. That takes me to the next thing, overheating. Because you have all of this tech packed in such a small body. Now, the 6400 is better, I will say that, but the 6300, man, it will overheat in a heartbeat, even in cool conditions. This is my second take of this video. The first take, it overheated. Right now, we're good. I don't know, whatever, but you need to be mindful of that. This camera, especially in warm conditions, if you're filming in 4K, it will get hot on you in a heartbeat and shut off after about 10 to 12 minutes of filming. Now, you can use fans and all of this other stuff, but if you don't have any of that stuff, you really have to be careful. Overheating is real. The third thing I really hate is no stabilization. The 6300 has zero stabilization. I mean, zero stabilization. So, unless you use a gimbal or unless you get a lens that's optically stabilized, which those aren't the best either, or unless you just have a super steady hand and you use like a neck strap to kind of leverage and all of that good stuff, your footage is gonna be all over the place unless you have one of those things I've mentioned. And there's a few other small things like the lack of a headphone jack. I hate it. The fact that it doesn't have a flippy screen. Would it be nice to have one? Sure. I wish it had dual card slots and things like that. But again, this is small stuff in a list of positives this freaking long. You know what I'm saying? So to wrap this up, in 2019, you're going to be hard pressed to find a camera with 4K of this quality, 1080p, with log profiles, with all of this stuff built in camera around a $500 ballpark. I'm just going to be honest. You won't find that anywhere. And if you're looking for that and you're on a budget, I would say get the 6300 if you don't want to spend a lot of money, and use the money that you saved on glass from Sigma or whoever it is you decide that you want to get lenses from. And then at that point, you have a fully featured kit that you can slip into a backpack, not spend a ton of money for it. But that's what I think. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you still rocking the 6000 or 6300 or anything, if you upgraded, if you got A7 III, maybe considering downgrading, whatever it might be, because actually there have been some people who have downgraded from A7 IIIs back to 6300s for whatever their reasons were. I'm just throwing it out there. But let me know what you think in the comments, what you're using, etc. And if you guys like this video, make sure that you share it for me, drop comments. And if you are interested in grabbing the 6300, there are affiliate links for you in the description. Let me throw this out there because Amazon been tripping. I will earn a small commission if you use my link. But that's all I got for you, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace and chicken grease. Terry Warfield.